And we're back on the Morgan Streetman Show, and you were just listening to President Donald Trump's live address to the nation, speaking following El Paso and Dayton shootings. And I'll give you my opinion on it, but Morgan, first I want to hear your opinion. What did you think of what he said?
Well, I think, one, I was surprised. Well, right when I got done saying, I wasn't, I am not convinced by the rush to call everybody a racist. That's kind of an overarching theme that I see in all political discussions. So I'm reticent to buy into the media telling us these guys are racist. Now, as soon as I get done saying that, of course, then we flip over to the president, and he's saying they're racist. Well, I guess if the president's saying it, it's pretty. It must be the case. I mean, I don't know, but the point is, I think he's right to point out the mental health aspects, whether the people are racist or not racist. The mental health aspects are what are driving these mass shootings. And, if we look at some of the mass shootings historically, many of them, from Sandy Hook to, all the way back to the Columbine shootings, many of these shooters, apparently the Aurora shootings, are all on these mind-altering drugs that are for people who have depression and other issues. But apparently these drugs are very, very powerful. They have very powerful effects on the mind, and they don't affect everybody the same way. So by and large, it seems like they probably help people with depression. Mm-hmm. Maybe most people that take the antidepressants and other drugs are helped by them. But, I mean, if you ever watch any of those drug commercials and you hear the side effects, potential side effects, they're pretty serious. And so you've got things like suicidal ideation, homicidal thoughts you'll hear on some of these antidepressants when they used to be a little bit more heavy in advertising those on television. And, a lot of these folks wind up being under psychiatric treatment and on heavy-duty psychiatric drugs. And I think we've just got to take a real hard look at that. I mean, are these drugs really helping everybody? Apparently there are swaths of the population that can take them, and they're not helped by them.
Well, I think everybody has different brain chemistry, so when you start doling out prescriptions, I think there's some guesswork involved.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's going to react.
It's kind of a trial and error, right?
Sure, and then you also have people, and by the way, we're having this discussion as a broad mental health discussion, but we don't know any of the situations as far as these two individuals. But it's something where it has to be monitored, and then is someone taking these medications the way that they're supposed to take them?
Well, that's true, too.
You know what a chilling fact is? There's been 250 mass shootings in the United States so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that.
And this is only the 217th day of the year.
Yeah, I've heard that, but you look at how they're defining mass shooting,
right.
Though.
That's exactly what I want to bring up, mass. What does mass mean? Because I don't remember this many mass shootings. I remember shootings where it could have been a disgruntled person going after a wife and killing a couple. Is that considered mass?
I mean, we've had a few shootings, right? I mean, there was a shooting February 15th of this year in Aurora, Illinois, where 5 people were killed. That was involving a factory worker basically shooting up a manufacturing plant. May 31st in Virginia Beach, 12 people were killed. There again, you've got a guy going back to where he worked and shooting up his work. We've got the shooting, obviously, in El Paso. Which one were you saying?
I was thinking Gilroy. Was that?
Right, the Gilroy Garlic Festival.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, good call. That was just
California just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. In theory, there was a mass shooting in Chicago also over the weekend where 7 people shot in a park late Saturday morning or late Saturday evening, early Sunday morning.
A drive-by.
Yeah, it was shot out of a Camaro, and 7 people were injured. I don't think anyone has died from that, but that could be, in theory, also a mass shooting. So you got to look at how they're defining it. It is sort of interesting that the shooting in Chicago, where 7 people were shot, didn't get hardly any mainstream news play, as is the case with most shootings in Chicago, which are pretty regular events in the city of Chicago, one of the most violent cities in the country, kind of like Baltimore,
Dallas,
New Orleans. These are some of the worst places in terms of murder rates. Houston, that you can live in the whole country.
Mm-hmm. So listening to President Trump speak, I tried to think from the perspective of someone, okay, forget about the people who like him. They're going to like whatever he says. But if you look at the other two groups of people who hate him, well, they're going to hate whatever he just had to say. And then if you look at the people who are kind of in the middle, although he is so polarizing, so I don't know who those people are. But when you listen to what he has to say, I think he addressed the things that you really needed to, i.e., he did talk about gun control. He did talk about mental health. He did talk about hate and white nationalism. So I think he hit everything that he needed to. And that's kind of what I want to see from a politician. The disappointing thing to me over the last couple of days is to watch people from both parties get on, stand up and just make this a political point. That's not what we need to do. We need to come together and put political viewpoints aside and try to solve a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think one of our issues that we have when doing all of that is that this is such a difficult problem to solve. We can't even really get our minds around what the problem is. And I would say that it could be a different problem in each individual person's, situation. I mean, one could be a mental health issue. One, I guess, could be a racism issue. There's could be all kinds of different things going on. And even then, not all problems have just a single cause. There may be multiple things going on. One thing I will say is a theme, at least this came out of the Dayton, Ohio shooters background. And we haven't done a lot of talking about that individual, Connor Betts. But if you looked into his background, he was heavy duty into some types of music that are very dark, called death metal. Mm-hmm. They have some very dark themes. In fact, of course, he was killed within about a minute of starting his shooting, right, which is amazingly fast. But
also amazingly distressing and sad that he was able to kill that many people in that short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, and the first one he killed was his sister. Mm-hmm. So that couldn't have been an accident. He couldn't have just showed up at the same place his sister was accidentally. He must have targeted her and then whoever else was around when he was.
Yeah, they did go there together, and she went.
They went
walking.
Together.
Yeah, and she went walking off another part of the store. So I think when the shooting started, she might have come back and he shot her then. But they said they separated in the store.
Well, wait, but we're talking about the guy at the bar in Dayton, though. Was there a store involved there too?
The store that was in Dayton, when they separated.
Okay.
Yeah, the store was kind of a store. It was
So they stopped at a store near the bars. I got you. And then he started shooting, and she came back out of the store, and he shot her.
Right.
Wow. Well, you look at, there's some pictures of him, and he's got some patches on. One of the patches in one of his pictures says, "Against all gods." You look at some of the things that he has posted on his Twitter feed. One, he was an Antifa supporter. And what he self-described, we'll put it that way, self-described leftist, and he wanted to vote for Elizabeth Warren, he said.
And again, we have to take it with a grain of salt because we don't know what fake accounts or whatever could be created from any of these people.
Yeah, my understanding, yes, absolutely. And who knows if they're even trying to throw you off the trail. But at least with the Dayton, Ohio, I don't see white supremacism in his background. What I see is a leftist who is also a Satanist, avowed Satanist. In fact, the sweatshirt, I don't know if you guys heard this, but the sweatshirt that he was wearing said, "No heart to feel, no soul to steal." And apparently that's a line from a death metal band. I did go out there and find the band and listen to about 10 seconds of one of their songs. I know there are people that like that kind of music. I find that stuff completely unlistenable. I mean, and I like Metallica. Believe me, I like Metallica, but I can't listen to that death metal stuff. It's just too much over the top. It's not musical to me. But anyway, that's what he was listening to, and that's the band that he was following.
Mm-hmm. And the Dayton shooter, he also, a lot of people came out and said, "Oh, no, we never saw this coming. He seemed like a nice kid." Some people said that he didn't have anything in his background that would have prevented him from purchasing the rifle that he bought. But then classmates came out and said, wait a second, this kid was suspended during the junior year at high school for making a hit list of people he wanted to kill and a list of people he wanted to rape. So it's just, and it goes into detail as to, according to these former students or classmates of his, what may have followed, what kind of investigation followed and how that was resolved. He was back at school eventually. But it brings up the question, when you have, we have those protective rights when someone is a minor, certain things are kept sealed, mm-hmm. and you kind of say, okay, they're 18 now, let's do a fresh start. But what kinds of things do we need to start to keep in a file for hey, this person was 16 or 17 and they did these types of things. Is this going to bleed over into their adult life? Do we have a mental illness issue here?
Right. Well, you know how we've long said that you need to watch out for those young kids that like to hurt animals.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And a lot of times they will become the serial killers or mass murderers of the future. So there is something tied to, if you're in youth or adolescence and you're behaving in a certain way and you're demonstrating that you don't have any human empathy, we've got to really, maybe you should be marked. I mean, you certainly should be given an opportunity to learn those things and come back from that. But maybe we ought to keep a little tickler on you to say, hey, we need to be watching this person. If they go out and make any strange, large purchases of guns and ammunition, maybe we need to go and have somebody go by and talk to them and just try to find out what's going on with them and then have trained professionals, not just beat law enforcement or beat police officers. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.